Hello everyone, my name is Clantus and welcome to the clan. So without further ado, let's get into this video. But before we go any further, please give the video a like. Smash the like button because this helps the clan to grow and the YouTube algorithm pushes it to more people. And the second thing that I also want to say, in case you have not seen the intro of my video, I accidentally kind of like deleted it out of my videos because I was trying to create space and for some reason it was all gone, and I'm like, woo. And I paid almost 800 Rand for that stuff. Yes, that's how much it cost. I'm sure the person that I did the intro with will probably have a copy and will send it. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, guys, let's go back to the video where we are going to the Gauteng High Court, the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial, and the heat is on. Right now, there is a Sergeant Mtetwa, who was the first responders when the call dispatcher basically told them about a shooting in progress at the Khumalo household. And of course, they drove there and they said when they got to the house, they met Themba Khumalo. This is Mark Khumalo's brother, or Kelly Khumalo's uncle, and then apparently he's the one who was left with the keys because Mark Khumalo had asked him to look after the house while they ran to the hospital. And Mr. Mtetwa says that Mr. Themba Khumalo was the one that opened the house for them. And then they scouted around and they saw some few little things, but they asked Themba Khumalo to lock the house. And then they went and then asked him some few questions, and he said he did not know much. All that he knows is that there was a shooting. So they wanted to know who is the person they should talk to, who has the information, and then Themba told them it is Mark Khumalo. Of course, the defense did stand up on objections, saying that this is going to be hearsay. But anyways, the state said, no, please accept this provisionally as evidence to the court. And of course, it was admitted. And then they drove to the hospital. So when they drove to the hospital, they said that they did not know who the victim was, which I don't think is the truth. I think Themba Khumalo did say to them, it is Senzo Meyiwa. And I'll tell you why. I think because they knew that was Senzo Meyiwa, because they left the crime scene. They abandoned the crime scene, which they should have safeguarded it the moment they got there, and then called the detectives, the forensics and ballistic investigators to start collecting the evidence to that shooting. But no, because they wanted to see for themselves Senzo Meyiwa, they drove to the hospital in the guise of saying they wanted to speak to the person that was in the house that would know the truth as to what had happened. They drove to the hospital. And now, if you want the person that should tell you the information as to what happened, then why are you viewing Senzo Meyiwa's body? Because when they got there, they went to the room where Senzo Meyiwa's body was kept, and of course it was unveiled to them. And then they were asked, did you see who the person was? They said yes. That's because they knew who this person is, because they've seen him on television before. When the prosecutor asked who was it, they said it was Senzo Meyiwa. So of course they've known all this time that Senzo Meyiwa was the one that was shot and killed, because they went there curious, but they said they went there to collect somebody that is going to tell them the full information about what had happened, when their job was supposed to get to the crime scene, secure it or safeguard it until all the relevant departments are at the crime scene, like the investigators, forensics, and all of those people. Then they say, which is a bombshell to me that was dropped, basically disputing what Ntab's saying as witness number 2 or 3, where she said that from the hospital, she and Mark Khumalo drove with the police back to the Khumalo house where Mark Khumalo had the hat. And then there are a couple of other bombshells that were dropped. I'm not quite sure if these police were upset at Ntab Singh's testimony, and so they decided that, you know what, we're just going to discredit her on the stand. Everything that she said, we are going to dispute it. Maybe, which I'm inclined to believe Ntab Singh's testimony over the police, because I think at this point, what this policeman is doing, he is trying to make himself look like they professionally secured the crime scene. When Ntab Singh said when they got back home with the police. It was her, Mark Khumalo, and the police that went back home. And when they got back home, they went into the house. Mark Khumalo had the suspect's hat on her, and then when she wanted to fetch water from the kitchen, she saw a silvery object on the floor. And I think at this point in time, this policeman wants to say, no, all of that did not happen. I believe in Tapsang. I believe in Tapsang. I know that this police guy is doing everything in his best to remember the events of that day, which I feel at some point he is doing his best to remember what had happened on that particular day. But at the same time, he is also disputing in Tapsang's testimony regarding the bullet shell or the bullet head, and also about her going into the kitchen, because nobody is supposed to be in the crime scene, that they're supposed to be safeguarding it so that it does not get contaminated with other people's DNA, other than that of the people that were in the house, as well as the perpetrators that had shot and killed Senzo Meyiwa. So of course he was asked then, when you got to the crime scene, did you see a Honda Ballad parked in the yard, outside the yard, in the neighborhood? He said no, they did not see any Honda Ballad. I'm thinking once again they are hitting in Tapsang's testimony that she was with a friend when Senzo Meyiwa was shot, and they saw somebody running into the park, and all those testimonies that you already know that Tapsang had already said on the stand. I think they were basically just I believe that this witness is disputing everything that Tapsang had said about the crime scene. So then he says when they came back to the crime scene, this is when they noticed that in the kitchen, the first thing that they noticed was a bullet projectile. And then when they went into the living room, they saw spatters of blood next to the sofas. But then if you remember Mthokozisi's testimony or evidence in chief, he said that Senzo Meyiwa's body was lying between the living room, the passage, and the kitchen. But this witness is saying that the blood spatter were in the living room. Even with Tumelo Madlala, he said that Senzo Meyiwa, when he found him with a bullet wound on his chest, he was where they were seated in the living room. So Mr. Mtetwa said that they then asked Makhumalo from the hospital going home, and when they got home, they continued to ask Makhumalo the information that they needed. They said once they got all the information they needed, they then called the relevant departments to come to the crime scene. Captain Zwane was the one that took Makhumalo aside and then interviewed her, basically probably taking statements as a detective to ensure that she's the one that gives the captain all that information. So Sergeant Mtetwa, Matebula, and two constables then handed over some of the information that they had received. Remember, them as being the first responders to the crime scene, they need to take crime scene statements. They said that they were busy writing their crime scene statements when all the other detectives started coming, and then this is when they were told that okay, this is the crime scene, they are going to take over, they can now leave. And this is when they said that they went outside, continued to finish the crime scene statement, but they finished the rest of it at the police station. I'm thinking First Lauders police station, and this is where he was finishing off. I think he said he was finishing off the last part of his crime scene statement, which needed to be commissioned anyway. So the commissioners of these statements was each other. That means Mr. Mtetwa's statement was being signed by Matebula, and Matebula's crime scene statement was commissioned by Sergeant Mtetwa. So then came to cross-examination, and the first defense lawyer that took the floor was Advocate Stephen, who first informed the witness that it's been 9 years since this matter had happened, and then over the years, memories do fade. However, they do have a memory book called a pocket book, where every police, apparently the first responders, would have is a pocket book where they would write everything that happened on the scene when they arrived. And then he wanted to know, where is the pocket book? And this is what also I found was a bombshell that was dropped by Sergeant Mtetwa. He said that they did, once the pocket book is full, they submit it to logistics, I suppose, at the SAPS, and then what they do, what the logistics will do after the pocketbook is full, they will give them a whole new one. So now when Stephen wanted to know where's the pocketbook of that particular crime that took place in Vosloorus, he said that when they went to the logistics to ask for that book, they were told that they could not find the book. However, at a later stage, they found out that every 3 or 4 years, they would destroy these pocketbooks. In my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute. The Senzo Meyiwa case has been a cold case for 9 years. You're telling me even cold cases, pocketbooks are thrown away or destroyed? This does not make sense to me. I would have thought that all the cold case pocketbooks will be kept aside in case someday this case becomes hot. They know that there are pocketbooks that will remind the detectives and the first responders, probably at their old age, and they don't remember everything that took place in that crime scene, that it will remind them, these are the things that you did when you got there the first time. So I think that SAPS, seriously, I don't know what we have in this country. Honestly speaking, I don't know what we have. So Advocate Steve wanted to know from Mthethwa if he knew who the victim was. He said no. Again, I don't think that is the truth. I think Mr. Themba Khumalo did tell them it was Senzo Meyiwa who got shot, because there's no way that Ma Khumalo will not tell her brother, whom she is giving the key to look after the house while they ran to the hospital to take who there. I think she did tell the brother that, listen, Senzo Meyiwa was here, and then something happened, and then he got shot, and now we are rushing him to the hospital. When the first responders arrived, that is Mr. Mthethwa, Mr. Matebula, and the 2 student constables, they were told that it was Senzo Meyiwa. They became curious, and then they went to the hospital instead of securing the crime scene. They were asked what time dispatch called them to let them know there was a shooting in progress. They said around 21:07, meaning about almost 9:20 at night. They were asked where were they when they got the call. They said they were at the police station when they got the call, and then they were asked about the distance between the police station and Ma Khumalo's house. They said it's about 5 to 7 kilometers, and it took them about 10 to 12 minutes to get there. They said that they know the area and they know the street. The only thing they needed to find was the house number. They were asked about how they were driving the vehicle. Did they have blue lights on and siren? They said no, we only had it blue lights on. Okay, which kind of like makes sense, because at night you don't want to wake people that are already asleep or disturb anybody, so they just said they drove with the blue lights on. So when they got to the Khumalo house, they met Themba Khumalo, who basically had no information as to what happened, which I still don't think that's the truth. So Advocate Stephen wanted to know from Mr. Mthethwa if they were wearing any protective gear when they entered the crime scene. That way the crime scene will not be contaminated. He said no, they were only wearing police uniforms. To me, I was like, oh my goodness. Is this really what happens when our police go and investigate a crime scene, such a shooting? Because I would have thought that they would wear, or they would come wearing protective gear. Like, for example, when the testimony of Mr. Masondo as well as Lamini, when they went to accused number 3's house, they never spoke about wearing any protective gear, or at least the gloves, when they found the gun on top of the wardrobe. So now, if they were holding the gun with their own bare hands, how do we know that that gun was not planted by the police? Because we do know that they did not do any fingerprints on the gun, did not have fingerprints tested on the bullet or the ammunition. So how do we know exactly if that gun belonged to accused number 3? You know what I mean? Because those are the sort of things that you will start thinking about, that these exhibitions, what if they are planted? Then it was Khumalo's turn that cross-examined the witness, and of course there it was a little bit hot, because Khumalo was asking some very important questions to the witness, and the witness went to as far to say that some of the important things he felt that he needed to include in the statement. But Khumalo wanted to know, but everything in the crime scene is important. Why would you omit some of the things and include other things in your statement? Then of course he did not have the answer for that. So some of the things that I felt were important that he did not include in his statement was about the blood spatter. He says that the reason why he did not put the blood spatter in the statement is because if he doesn't write anything in his statement, surely his colleague would have added such things in his own statement. And the second thing that I felt was important that he should have added in his statement was the crutches. He said that the reason why he did not include that in his statement is because Makumalo told him that the crutches belonged to Tumelo. Or basically he said it belonged to a boy that was at the hospital. So it even came to a point where the judge was basically rescuing the witness when it came to his training. He says that this was a constable at the time that he was at the crime scene in 2014, and therefore he's not trained as an expert. So of course that gave him Shololo, who was next after Ngumalo, an idea on how she was going to cross-examine this witness. And boy, did she come with it. So basically it was about when he got to the crime scene for the first time. What did he look for? He said, I was looking at things with my own eyes. And of course the judge said, okay, listen, this guy, he's not trained as an expert. He's not trained as a forensics investigator. He is a first responder in a crime scene. So that is why he's answering the way he's answering. So Mshololo, when she came, she said, okay, I'm going to speak to you as a member of the police, meaning that you went to a police academy. And when you were trained as a police, there are things that you were taught when you are responding to a crime scene. And then she said, at the time when you responded to the crime scene, what was your rank? He said that he was a 5-year experienced junior constable. Then she said, by the time you went to that crime scene on the 26th of October 2014, had you gone through some sort of training or some sort of courses as a constable? He said yes. And then she wanted to know what were those trainings were. And then he said that if he could be given time, he's going to write them overnight tonight, and then he's going to come back and tell the court what he was trained in. In my mind, I'm thinking, come on, surely you would remember 3 or 4. Surely, and then the others you can tell us tomorrow. What were those? I feel like he was running away from the fact that he lied to the court that he was not trained in forensics. Because I would assume that when you are at the police academy, even though you may not be taught that the depths of forensics, there are things, or at least the surface of forensics, that you'll be taught that as a first responder to a crime scene, these are the following things that you need to look out for and that you need to note down in your scene statement. I think that's what he was running away from, and then I don't know, buying time, how that is going to change anything. Maybe he's saying, okay, I need to be first coached by the prosecutor what I need to say. That's what it was giving to me. Then Mshololo became quite smarter as well and said, okay, fine, as a police constable at the time, at least tell us what was the first thing that you did when you got there. And this is what he said, and I will quote and I'll just read them down. He said, number 1, I will find a complainant. Number 2, I will find somebody that is going to explain the information to me. And then number 3, with the information that I have, and then I will safeguard the scene. And the 4th thing, then with all information gathered, that is when he will start calling all the departments that are relevant, like the detectives and forensics and CSC, or is it crime scene, whatever you call them, those people. And then from there, the scene no longer belongs to him. It now belongs to the detectives or the investigating officers. Then Mshololo challenged him and said, but you did not secure the crime scene. What did you do? You left the crime scene with Themba Khumalo. He said, no, I did not leave the crime scene with Themba Khumalo. Then she asked him, then whom did you leave the crime scene with when you went to the hospital? He said they just left the crime scene alone. And then she asked him, is that the procedure, to leave the crime scene alone when you are a first responder to the crime scene? He said he does not have an answer for that. Mshololo wanted to know where else did they search after they searched inside the house. They said they went outside and searched if any other crimes were committed in the yard and outside of the yard. And then she wanted to know if a Honda Ballad was in the yard or outside the yard or in the neighborhood. He said no, there was none. Then it came to the bullet projectile. I think it was Mumalo who wanted to know what was the projectile, how did it look like. He said it was the head of the bullet. So this time Mshololo wanted to put it to the witness that another detective came the following day and said they found a bullet projectile on top of a kitchen cupboard. He said he had no knowledge of that because he did not see that. Only one that he saw was the one on the floor, which was a bullet head. And then it came to the statement of Sylvia Happy Ngubeni. I thought that statement was packed with bombshells, which kind of like disputes everything that Zandile Khumalo said, everything that Mtogo said, and everything that Tumelo said. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? What this statement is said. Basically, the first thing that I noted was the whistle blowing. None of the witnesses talked about a whistle being blown. I'm not quite sure who blew the whistle. I think it was the Ngachas. And then Happy Ngubeni said she and her daughter Gugu got up and then they went because once a whistle blows in the community, everybody must come out to assist the family where they may be in trouble. She says that when she came outside, she saw the Ngacha standing outside the gate looking into the Khumalo household. And then when they asked what is going on, they said Senzo Meyiwa has been shot in the Khumalo house. She says that when she came out, she saw Senzo Meyiwa's X6 being reversed and they drove off. She doesn't know who was driving the X6, but she assumed it was Kelly taking Senzo Meyiwa to the hospital. She says that this is when she made a suggestion that she says that this is when she suggested that the police must be called, and this is when Maggie Peary said, why call the police because Senzo Meyiwa is not dead? She said, even though Senzo Meyiwa was not dead, we still need to call the police, saying Happy Ngubeni. And she says that this is when Kaya Ngache was the one that called the police. She says that this is when she saw Khumalo coming out of the house and going into a vehicle, going to the hospital, where she was crying, saying that the person that shot Senzo Meyiwa, she knows her because the person comes here by the house often. I was like, whoa, not intruders? She says she doesn't remember who exactly opened the Khumalo house when they went into the house. And secondly, the first thing that she also noticed was a lot of water on the floor. And then she was a little bit shocked as to why there is water on the floor when somebody was shot. And this is when she asked Maggie Peary why there's so much water on the floor. And this is when Maggie Peary said the people that were in the house were drinking. And so she started cleaning out the empties of the alcohol that were pretty obvious on the floor. And then when Happy Ngubeni asked Mapiri, why are you cleaning the crime scene? She said that she doesn't want the police to know that the people that were in the house were drinking alcohol. She says that after Mapiri has said that she and Gugu and another lady, they then decided to leave and they left Maggie Peary in the house by herself. But not long after that, she came out of the house and then she walked into a car and they drove off to the hospital. She says that this is when the police started coming and they came in numbers. They asked everybody to vacate the Khumalo yard and then they cordoned off the yard. She says that they stood outside up until 2 a.m. and this is when she decided to go back in and to go to bed when she saw that Khumalo and the police had returned. So the statement was written on the 6th of July 2018 at 3:10. This is like what, 4 years after the incident. But anyways, that is where the court adjourned for a long break, and this is where we at. Of course, Sergeant Mthethwa is not done with his testimony because he is still being cross-examined by Advocate Mshololo, and it is hot. And another thing that you would have noticed about Sergeant Mthethwa is that he was quite confident when he was giving his evidence in chief. And then he started basically, his voice almost non-existent at this point in time. He is being helped a lot by the translator or the interpreter because you can't hear a word that he's saying. His confidence is no longer existent, which kind of like tells you or indicates that he is not telling the truth. So that is why I'm inclined to believe Nthabiseng's testimony when she said the things that she said on the stand. I did say that she was giving some truth, and I also felt that she was withholding some of the truth because probably she was afraid of Khumalo or one of the people in the house from never talking to her again, or whatever the case might be regarding whatever agreements or deals that they have done to stick to the story of intruders and whatever else that was in the Khumalo house on the 26th of October 2014. So this is becoming very clear that there were never intruders in that house on the 26th of October 2014, because even with this witness, It's not indicating anything about intruders. It's not even indicating that there were more than one bullets that were fired out of that gun on that particular night. So here we are, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, by this time, Baloy, come on, bro. Come on. You got to consider, relent, withdraw this case. It's a lost cause. But anyways, until they return from the long break, then we are going to hear the rest of the testimony by Sergeant Mthethwa. Anyways, if you like the video, give it a like. If you didn't like the video, give it a like. Anyways, do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are not subscribed yet, so you can hear the other part of this testimony. And my super thanks are turned on. Thank you so much to everybody that is super thanking me and supporting this channel financially. Thank you to all of you guys that are liking the video, because indeed I see the algorithm is pushing the video, and we are headed to 10,000 subscribers. Yay. Anyways guys, do leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think thus far about Sergeant Mthethwa's testimony. Do you believe him? And also share this video far and wide, and I'll see you again very soon with a new video. Goodbye.